077 and ask that it be properly displayed.
Representative Lundeen, are you moving the amendment?
Please. 077, it's amendment number 7.
Representative Lundeen has now moved J077, and it is almost displayed.
It's up to this House to bring this issue into focus.
Representative Lundeen, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, or PARCC. Now, you've heard from this podium today that, in fact, we have other legislation moving that would, in fact, deal with this issue, but that's not completely accurate. The legislation that seems to be moving, perhaps through this body and from the other body, deals with a very narrow subset of the questions around PARCC, Common Core, and the authority and ownership over those items. This conversation started out a couple of years ago very broad, and I'm sure that all of you, whether Republican or Democrat, heard from your constituencies, from your voters around these issues of Common Core, PARCC, who owns, who controls, and what these tests mean and do to us. In fact, at the end of the day, it's very clear that the assessment over education is the linchpin that connects standards to the curriculum. And we in this state, through our Constitution, honor, above all other things in education, the protection of curriculum to be a matter of local control. This PARCC assessment that would be, in fact, defunded by this amendment seizes that local control from the elected school boards in our communities and rolls it up to a consortium, to something, an entity, unelected, controlled by people beyond this state. It is inappropriate. I would argue it's unconstitutional, and it's certainly not what the people of Colorado have asked for. This particular amendment would take that money that is now going towards this PARCC assessment, and it would roll it back into the negative factor. It would give local school districts the ability to use that money as they see fit. Let's talk a little bit about what the PARCC test does. Had a group of teachers in the lobby today telling me about how it is disrupting their school. It is taking their focus away from that which we must prize above all else in education, and that is a focus on learning opportunities, a focus on instructional effort, and it's shifting that focus in meaningful, concrete, and measurable ways away from teaching and over only to assessment. This test, as characterized specifically by PARCC, is a text-intensive test. If you're moving students into this testing environment who are not comfortable with massive amounts of text, they will have difficulty. And I would argue in some significant ways that puts the students who are most disadvantaged among us further at disadvantage. It will cause them to have more difficulty in being properly assessed and understood and return to the learning pathways that they need to succeed in their lives. This test is also incredibly technologically dependent. So what that means to schools is time that was spent in education is now being narrowed. Space that was previously being used for testing is no longer available. I talked to one school where they said we used to use all 55,000 square feet of our school when it came to assessment time. But now, given the PARCC, we can only use about 5,500 feet of our school because it's narrowed down to where they can administer this technologically driven test. And they find that very difficult. Also, the testing window. I'm not talking about the time that it takes a student to take the test, but the testing window that a school must block out to successfully administrate this system of assessments has gone from days in the school calendar to weeks in the school calendar. And this is disrupting, again, you're hearing this theme over and over from me, our ability to get to what's most important, and that is learning opportunities, and it is distracting us from an educational and teaching focus and shifting us to an assessing focus. I would argue further that this test presents us with significant and terrible governance problems. You know, we've got a bill going that has been referred to from this podium, and I spoke about it just a few minutes ago, that is addressing the question of how often should we test? Should we test less frequently, perhaps 3 through 8, not 9, 10, and so forth? But that's only a very narrow question that we're asking. And at the end of the day, because we as a state, the state of Colorado, do not own the control of the test, those who do own the control of that test very likely could next year or the year after that or the year after that drive back into this chamber another conversation around what our testing regime should look like. Because we are not establishing that. We are not controlling that. A consortium beyond this state is, in fact, owns and controls the rights to that process. What does this mean? What does the fact we don't have ownership over this test mean to us? We don't know, because those other than this body, those other than the State Board of Education, in fact, control the destiny, control the future configuration of what that test may or may not look like. This test is not Colorado controlled. It's impeding and not promoting our students' abilities to learn. It will bring the struggles that we are facing and have, quite frankly, been inadequate in facing the challenges that we have as a body to deal with the testing problems in this state. It will bring those same challenges back to this body and the Senate again and again and again. We must pull this weed out by the roots. We must do it now, and the way to do it is to vote yes on this amendment. I urge your support for this amendment.
Representative and folks in the gallery, just to thank you very much for being here. The rules